Hey, this is Dominic, and this is your home for the cutting-edge conversations on optimizing your personal performance, lighting up your sex life, and living a purpose-driven life of your own design.
These are the topics that Dominic and I have both struggled with in our own lives and still don't always get right. This is Brian. Welcome to the Great Man Podcast.
Back in the final quarter of 2021, we decided to do something a little bit different. Instead of doing a series of one-off episodes, we decided to line up a sequence of 13 episodes, a 13-week series called Building Your Best Self. And every week we tackled a different topic around that theme, like how to work with anger, how to master your time, how to optimize your energy, exploring the 5 questions that every man needs to ask about his life, and many other topics. And the feedback that we got from you guys was you really seemed to like honing in on a particular area of focus and going deep. It felt like a mini adventure or getting a free 90-day course curriculum on how to become your best self. So you guys have been asking for more of that. So for the next couple of months, we thought that we'd pick out a few topics that you guys have told us are important to you and building out mini-series, like 3 or 4 episode mini-series around these topics. The first topic, which we're going to be talking about today, is on mindfulness for men. And this is going to be a 3-part series, how to cultivate a deeper level of mindfulness specific to some of the things that men are dealing with. Episode number 1, which is today, is on how to cultivate control and calm in the eye of the storm. And this is really a conversation about how to find inner peace even when the world around you is in chaos. That's powerful. Next week's episode is on how to navigate the monkey mind. And rule number 1 of navigating the monkey mind is don't pick a fight with the monkeys. And we'll go deep into that discussion. Mark Melvin is going to be joining us for that. He's a mindfulness teacher, yoga instructor, beloved by the men in our community. He's been a guest on the show before. And episode 3, so the 3rd week of this series, is going to be on befriending your inner critic. And our special guest for that is Mascara, a name that many of you recognize. He's very popular and, becoming quite well known in the meditation mindfulness space. He's a friend of mine, a friend of Brian's, and he's written a great book on mindfulness called Stop Missing Your Life. In today's episode, Brian was unable to attend, so we've called in our boy, Keith Bracci, who many of you know. He's been on the show about 4 or 5 times, a leader in the Great Men Mastermind community. And I would say probably one of the deepest men in my life in terms of having walked this path of inner work. And he's cultivated a real profound sense of inner peace and awareness. So we're going to be talking together about how to cultivate calm and maintain inner control in the eye of the storm when the world around you is in chaos. We're going to be talking about the 3 things that you experience in your inner world that make you feel out of control and how to develop empowering relationships with each of those 3 things to maintain more control. We're going to talk about how to build inner strength to resist getting absorbed by your thoughts and emotions that sabotage you. And then we're going to talk about how cultivating this level of awareness leads to the payoffs, these radical levels of freedom and gratitude in your life, no matter what's going on around you. So enjoy the first of our 3-part series on mindfulness for men, cultivating control and calm in the eye of the storm, featuring Keith Bracci, who's going to begin with his story right now.
So I was 12 years old, Cub Scout, and my dad gives me the greatest gift you could possibly get as a 12-year-old Cub Scout, a knife, Swiss Army knife, So there's like all the little pieces to play with, what does each one do? And I'm so excited, but I got to take a dump, right?
Yep.
So I bring it with me, sitting on the ball, dumping, pulling out each piece, figuring out what it does.
That's a hazard, man. You can't be holding
right.
it.
I'm glad the story doesn't go that route.
Right.
But, I drop the knife.
Yep.
And it drops into the toilet.
Yep.
Luckily missing vital parts on its way. But I had already started dumping. So it's in a mess, right?
Yep.
And I'm crying. And I remember calling out to my dad, and I'm like, I can't even wipe because I don't want to put the like paper on top. I don't know what to do,
Yeah.
He comes in, he's like, what's wrong? I'm like, my knife, I dropped it in. And he's like, get it. I'm like, I can't get it. Poop's in there. And he's like, it's just poop. Just grab it. No, I can't. Right. So my dad reaches in the bowl and I think he's going to grab the knife.
Yeah.
He doesn't grab the knife, grabs a log of my shit. And he holds it and he's looking at me and he's like holding it like in front of me. And he's like, it's just a piece of shit, Keith.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And with his other hand, he reaches in, he grabs the knife. With his other hand, he puts the shit back in the bowl. He washes his hands, he washes the knife, and he goes, look, it's all over. It was just a piece of shit.
Right.
And like that story has stuck with me forever because it's like when I'm in those moments, where I got to deal with something I don't want to deal with. And it's like, dude, just get in there, make it happen, wash your hands. It'll be all over.
Yeah. Is that not the perfect story to open up a conversation around mindfulness? It's just like it involves all the best elements, knives, taking dumps, dads reaching into toilet bowls. There's deeper wisdom here around the story. So if we were even to take it a step beyond your father's brilliant insight around it's just shit, there's something even more liberating underneath that, which is you have the ultimate power to choose how you experience anything that's going on in the world. I'm not saying that that's easy, but I'm saying you do have the ultimate power to choose how you respond to anything that happens in the world. In this shitty story, you chose to experience it as tears, sadness, fear, whatever, right? And it just
traumatic,
exactly, right? It happened so quickly that the emotions popped up so fast. You were absorbed in that. And therefore that was in your limited experience, the only reaction you could have had. Your dad with a little bit more life experience walks in and he's just like, it's just shit. He even picked up a log to prove of your own log. I mean, like he picked it up and he's like, it's just shit. I wash my hands and the situation's over. There's also an infinite number of other ways that could have been experienced, right? You are the one who has the power to choose how to experience that. And I think that is the perfect entree to this conversation that we want to have today here around control, around mindfulness. How much control do we actually have? And when we are trying to control the world, how futile of an experience that is and how much suffering that causes on the inside.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really remarkable. I mean, yeah, like that's a perfect example where I could have just went in and did exactly what he said. I didn't know that was an option.
Right.
And it would have been a nothing. Just reach in, grab it, wash my hands, done, but the stories that popped up, I dropped it in the bowl. I'm going to lose it. I'm never going to have it again. My dad's going to be mad at me. Now I can't play with it. Like all of these stories that just are the like reflex. But yeah, so we're going to get into what's an alternative way of handling that kind of moment.
Yeah, exactly. So I think the entry point of conversation is to bring up an author that we talk about on this podcast quite a bit. And he's like kind of our spiritual guru that one day we have to go and meet is Michael Singer. We loved his books, Untethered Soul and The Surrender Experiment, but the audio book that's really captured our soul is Living from a Place of Surrender. One of the things that he does at the very beginning of the very first chapter is he says, whenever he meets people, right, his students, he likes to look at them and say, hey, are you in there? I'm talking to you. Are you in there? And inevitably people kind of get this like question look on their face and they're like, well, yeah, of course I'm in here. But then he follows up with the next question. He goes, what's it like being in there? Like, what's it like being inside of that body of yours, that psyche of yours? And the answer is oftentimes not so great. Most of the time, we're either in some sort of like kind of quiet dissatisfaction, right? It's like, oh, I'm tired, I'm hungry, I'm feeling rushed, like feeling below what you would want to, or you're feeling outright aggravated, anxious, afraid, tense, something even more disturbing. And then you get these fleeting moments of relief every so often, right? Where like you down the tub of Ben and Jerry's or you get hammered, or, you get absorbed in a great movie. But then when it's all over, it's kind of, you drop back down to those less satisfactory states.
Yeah. He'll be like, I'm psychic. I'll tell you exactly what's going on inside you. He goes, there's stuff going on that you wish it wasn't happening.
Right.
Or there's not stuff going on that you wish was happening.
Yeah.
Right? And so you're constantly in a state of aversion or clinging to, reaching out for, instead of just being with what's actually there.
That's right. He says, like, you only have two fears. He's like, I'm psychic. You only have two fears. You're afraid that you're not going to get what you want, and that you're afraid that you're going to get what you don't want. Right? That's it. Those are the only two fears. And when you break it down, you're like, yeah. And then what do you end up doing from that place of fear? You build your entire life around. For many years of my life, I built my entire life around, I have to get the things that will make me feel okay in here. And I have to avoid the things, stress, tension, criticism, failure, that make me feel not okay on the inside. And so I'm always not okay, and all my actions are springing from a place of not okayness. Why would I expect my life to be anything other than not okay with temporary flashes of okayness?
And how's that working out for you?
Right.
Yeah, that's what he likes to say. Yeah. How's that working out?
Yeah. And so I think what I'd love to hear from you, man, is, we'll get into one of your stories. That's something that you're experiencing right now, but to provide a foundation for your story to unpack it, one of the most important principles that Michael Singer teaches, is there are three things that you experience in there. When we say in there, it's like, we've got this body, we've got this like place that we call home, but we're bigger than our bodies. We're beyond our bodies, right? Like if you were to chop off one of my arms, I'm still here. Like maybe I have one less arm, but like the same me, the same awareness is here. So what's going on in there? And he says you experience three things. The first thing is you experience the outside world coming in, right? So the outside world is, there's traffic on the streets. There's rain. There's mountains and trees. There's your lover. There's your boss. There's your kids. There's food. There's the white lines on the highway as you're driving by. Like there's the mundane. There's the things that stand out. There's fireworks. There's oceans. There's, on and on and on. And each of those things, as they come in to your awareness, right? This is the important thing, is if you're aware of those things, it comes into your awareness and then it has some sort of effect inside. So for example, Keith, I'm just looking at you right now. There's shit going on in Russia and the Ukraine that's happening. That's tragic in this moment. As I'm speaking with you, that's not in my awareness. Therefore, that outside thing that's happening is not affecting me presently, right? Because my awareness is turned to you. So it's very important to understand that where your awareness is has the utmost effect on the impact you're feeling on the inside, right? And then these other two things would be, okay, now the outside world comes in. That's number one. The second thing that you're experiencing are your thoughts. Keith drops his Swiss Army knife in the toilet, and then all those thoughts you just said. Maybe I lost the knife. My dad's going to be upset at me. I'm such an idiot, whatever, right? The stories, the thoughts, which then trigger the third thing, your feelings, the emotions, the feelings that kick up, anxiousness, tension, frustration, anger, joy, bliss, gratitude, etc. There's this carnival of experiences that are happening inside of you. And when you were 12 years old, like you'd said, I didn't even know there was an option to experience it any other way than how I was experiencing it. The outside world, the thoughts that you have, and then the triggered emotions are so overwhelming, can be so overwhelming that you can get absorbed in that and lose the fact that it's you are the one who is experiencing those things. What that means is if you're the one who's experiencing those things, you can actually create separation and look at your thoughts from a distance, look at your emotions from a distance, look at the outside world from a distance without being absorbed by it. This takes work. This is really hard. But when you don't get swallowed by those, like you did when you were 12, you got swallowed by it. Your father came in and gave an intervention that woke you up to saying, whoa, I can create a space between the stimulus and response and choose where I want to go next.
Yeah, I love that. What's interesting is that sequence of three things. What we instinctively do is try to change all of these external factors try to control all of these external factors so it doesn't create this thought, and that thought creates the emotion, because the emotion, any negative emotion doesn't feel good. I don't like it when it doesn't feel good. Mm-hmm. I don't want that bad feeling. I got to make sure that trigger doesn't happen again.
That's right.
But the thing is, you don't control all of it. You don't control when it rains on your wedding day. You don't control when the guy's driving in front of you 10 miles below the speed limit and you need to get somewhere. So controlling those things is impossible, but it's where we put all of our efforts and attention.
All of it. Perfect example of this. I was just thinking back to 7th grade. I had just left 7 years of Catholic schooling, kindergarten through 6th grade. I was in the uniform where you wear like green pants, a white shirt, and a clip-on tie, right? I wore that every day for 7 years. Now I'm in public school, 7th grade, and I get to wear whatever I want. And I have no idea how to dress myself. I look like a shithead, right? So I show up to school. I have this outfit that just looks stupid. It doesn't match. I get made fun of. And the trigger is I feel weak and insecure because I'm getting made fun of. So what do I want to do? I want to control that trigger. And all of a sudden, like, I become obsessive around, what do the cool kids wear? How do they wear it? What are the sneakers that they're wearing? What are the shirts? I remember like hypercolor t-shirts. Remember that shit? And like Stussy t-shirts. I mean, all that stuff, like, the Air Jordans, the Reeboks, whatever. It's like, have to get all those things. And guess what? Like, I developed a keen sense of fashion out of that. Like, there's a positive benefit. But what I didn't do was get to the root of, I was terrified of being mocked, ostracized, being the outsider. So I spent a ton of energy trying to control the outside forces. I didn't want those other kids making fun of me. I still had a deeply rooted fear of criticism. I was just able to modify one area where I wasn't going to be criticized, which was my attire. But as I got older in life, there were plenty of other reasons to criticize me, for my game with women, for, speaking, how I spoke in public, for how I performed in business, and that same fear was always there. And it's exhausting to try and control all that shit.
Yeah. I mean, it's a perfect example. What we're after is, you want people to think you're good. You want people to think that you're okay, that you are lovable, that you're accepted, that you're valuable, these kinds of things. And if you're dependent on that emotion of feeling secure, on what other people think, then when you trip and fall and everyone laughs at you, like, you can't control that.
That's right.
Bringing the focus to, how can I feel okay inside without being dependent on others? Don't put the remote control in their hand. How do I put it in my hand? When I'm not feeling okay, I don't have to go out and achieve something so people think I'm great. I can just sit there and channel my own inner confidence in how I view myself. Like, that's the move.
That's exactly the move, man. And, to go back and emphasize something you said earlier, which is, we spend all of our time trying to control the outside world, to not trigger the thoughts, to not trigger the emotions that we don't want, or to control the outside world, to manipulating it in a way where we can have the thoughts that make us feel good and the emotions that feel good. Michael Singer goes through this whole scientific explanation of how the world that we live in today is 13.8 billion years in the making. 13.8 billion years. All of the atoms and all of the chemicals and all of the minerals and everything that had to happen, all the things that had to come together to create the world that we're living in today, the forces that are at play between the sun and the solar system and the moon and the climate here on Earth and the animals and the water, even what's going on inside of your body, you're not making your intestines do what they do. And, all the things that you have no control over, and you're going to have the fucking balls, right? to think that you can impose your will on the world that's been here for 13.8 billion years and will be here for another 13.8 after you're gone, to control it in such a precise way that it can weave its way through the bullshit that you've created as criteria to feel okay. If I get a good night's sleep, if my work is humming, if my kids are behaving, if there's no traffic on the street, if the weather outside is perfect, if the Jets aren't losing again, then I'm okay. This needle, the eye of the needle that all these things have to thread for you to feel a modicum of okayness for a moment. And he laughs at the folly of it. And then this is the line that he dropped that shook me. He said, what if you could create a state of existence inside that no matter what was going on in the world around you, you could be okay. Then what does life feel like? If your business goes to bankrupt, you can actually be okay and look at that as like, okay, next challenge to figure out. If you have an illness that you're diagnosed with, okay, like I accept that. How do I live from this place of healing or, just managing this? Like, how can you figure out a way to be okay with everything that life throws at you? It's not like allowing someone to steal from your house and being like, oh, I'm okay with that. It's different than that, right? And maybe like I see you nodding your head, like, how would you describe the difference there between I'm okay with the outside environment because now I can make an empowered choice about how I want to react versus just like being limp-wristed and letting people walk all over you for the rest of your life?
Yeah, listen, I mean, you have the time between your birth and your death, right? You're here for this like sliver. You're talking about 13.8 billion years. What do we get? 100 at best? It's like this little sliver, right? And things are going to happen. You're going to have bankruptcies and divorces and shit's going to go down. And through all of that, that's your life experience.
Yeah.
You are okay. So the good part is, the fact is, you're going to have life experiences until you die, right? So there you are. Now you can resist all of those life experiences as they happen, and you can hate all of them. Right. You can be like, I wish this didn't happen. I wish that didn't happen. Why is this happening to me? I wish it was this way, that way. And then, like you say, when everything aligns, you close that deal and you scored good on the golf or whatever, Yeah. Feel good, Or you could just feel that way because it's like, he gives an example of you're in the middle of nowhere and it's raining and it's your wedding, right? And you're like, oh my God, the day's ruined, right? You can be like, this is horrible. Or your mind could be blown that the earth has figured out this way to bring water to these trees. Right. I'm nowhere even near water. And the earth has figured out a way to bring this water here. That is unbelievable. So it's like, it's just how you show up to it.
Yeah.
Is the difference.
100%. And
it's going to happen either way.
Yeah, man. And this takes work, right? This takes work because, over the course of our lifetimes, we start to develop these neural pathways that kind of like, this is what I need to be happy. This is what I need to be okay. And in order to reach a state, and you and I are working on this right now, it's like, we want to be okay all the time, more than okay. Like he says, actually, once you learn how to decouple yourself, like remove yourself from the outside world absorbing you, your thoughts absorbing you, your emotions absorbing you, you get to sit back in what's called the seat of self. And you're the observer of all these things. The best analogy I can give you is kind of like, imagine if you're sitting in your home and there's a tornado going on outside, right? And you're safe in your home because it's protected and maybe it's like reinforced, but let's just assume that like everything is steel plated and like the windows can't be broken down. You can be sitting in the home while there's a tornado going on outside and you can be safe, right? And you can actually watch in awe of this, like this force of nature and watching it rip through the area. And you can actually like have appreciation for that, right? The same thing is possible, as he talks about, in your inner world. If you are seated in that seat of self, like again, that home, looking through the glass window where you can see those thoughts, the tornado of thoughts, the tornado of emotions coming through, and yet you don't have to jump out. You're not leaving the home to go get swept up in the tornado. You can witness it and then let it pass and be like, wow, now what? What's going to come through next? And I think this is where I'd love to bring in your story, man, about what you're dealing with right now. And then I'll share my own story of how I've been using these practices, especially over these last 15 months, which have been the most challenging of my life. You're a small business owner, a very successful one. Your business is making multiple millions of dollars in revenue and earnings every single year. This is your biggest year yet. And mo money, mo problems, right? Like, so you're experiencing a tsunami of your own. Why don't you share what you've been going through and then how you've been dealing with it?
Yeah, it's actually really difficult to describe the emotions going on because they really take on a whole new, they're really different than how I'd experienced them in the past. Right now, finance issues and I'm in supply chain. Yeah. So I import aluminum from around the world. So container shipments are getting delayed and raw materials are, even Ukraine has one of the largest mines of alumina, which makes aluminum. And so that's closed. And Russia is a huge supplier of aluminum into the world market. And everyone's, boycotting and sanctions. And So there's a lot going on, a lot. Okay. And in the past, the way my mind would go instinctively without my awareness, I'm not aware of this. I'm just aware of the emotions that were triggered. But through some work, I got some awareness of it where my mind would go, if this doesn't happen, I'm going to lose this customer. If I lose this customer, then I'm going to lose my business. If I lose my business, I lose my house. I lose my house. My kids can't go to school. And now I'm in the street. Like, that's how I would experience this kind of information that came in.
Wow.
And when you say that out loud, logically, you're like, Keith, take it easy. That's a big jump. But that's the big jump my mind was making, whether I liked it or not, and it would catastrophize these things and create these, impending, looming doom stories that are coming. And then I would operate from that place. And it's a place of panic. It's a place of just tension and stress and worry and fortunately, I'm good at what I do. So I would bulldog with the fuel of all of this anxiety and stress to go figure it out. And I would figure it all out. And then I would say, that stress is good. It really helped me figure it out. Right. I've come to realize, through this inner work, is that story it's not true. There is no scenario where out homeless on the street. I have tons of experience. I have tons of networking. I have tons of savings. I have a lot of resources where even though that my mind plays that story, I can see it. Now I can go, ooh, my mind just made that story. And ooh, there's the tension that follows that story. I can feel it come up in my gut. I can feel the tension in my chest. And there it is. There's no mystery to it. There's no fire alarm. When that external trigger happens, my mind tells this story, my heart follows that story with this reaction, and that just happened. Would you look at that? There it is. And then from my seat of self, I can witness that and say, all right, what do I want to do next?
Yeah.
What do I want to do next? And I was telling you earlier, I had that happen yesterday. I had a bunch of calls. Customers are in a panic, suppliers are in a panic, everything's heavy. And I go, okay, what do I want to do next? And I could feel my insides racing. I can witness my mind racing, but I wasn't in those things like I normally would be. And I said, okay, I can't even really see clearly what I need to do next right now. Let me get myself right. So I went, and in my office, I got my meditation cushion sitting over there. I went and I sat on it, and I'm sitting there, and I can almost feel my hands shaking, with everything that's going on. And I'm like, this isn't working. Okay. How do I calm down? Because from my calm state, I can make decisions. So I went in the middle of, I just got phone calls of alarms going off. We need this, this, and that. I went and I took a nap. I laid down. I got under the covers, put my head on a pillow, and I breathed. And after about 30 minutes, I could feel all of that tension release. I got connected to myself, and I knew exactly what to do next. And I just went into action.
Wow.
And I went into that action where I didn't even have what I had 30 minutes earlier, that panic, where that anxiety would have driven me for the next weeks until this was resolved. And I wouldn't have been able to breathe. I wouldn't have been able to enjoy time with my friends, with my family until this was resolved. Now I released it, and I went and I did the not even exact same stuff, probably higher level quality stuff, because I'm thinking clearly. I'm not operating out of panic. I'm operating from wisdom, from years of, I'm an expert at this stuff. This is what I do. And just got into action, and then finished. And I was done at 5 o'clock, went and picked up my kids and had a beautiful meal with my family. We laughed and played,
Dude, there is so much gold in that story. It's like, I hope I don't miss any of it, because it's everything we're talking about here is embodied in what you just lived, right? How you showed up. So the first thing is that even with all your awareness, even with all the practice, your mind still went on hyperdrive, and your emotions sent so much energy through your body that your hands were shaking, right? And so what we're not saying is here that the mind will ever be quiet. Like, we're not saying here that your body and emotions are not going to react to what's coming in. That's conditioned, right? Michael Singer will talk about that. He'll say, listen, your mind is a computer, And it just gets programmed through life experiences. A computer by itself, right? Like before it has electricity, before you put in an operating system, it's just pure potential. But then as you write code, you put in the operating system, you put the programs in, you put the files in, then it becomes quite predictable what the computer can do. It's the same thing with your mind. You've had a lifetime of experiences and your mind is programmed to react in a certain way. And before you had this awareness of sitting in the seat of self, you would just get absorbed in the mind, which would then take you to the realm of emotions, because the mind oftentimes triggers the emotions too. And then the emotions that you were experiencing was intense, like the body was shaking. And what I loved about what you did was you had this awareness and you're like, if I get sucked into this, and if my next actions come from a place of this energy, this anxiety, then I'm going to be setting myself up for everything that comes out of this anxious energy will have some element of anxious output, right? Whether it's an interaction with a client, whether it was a solution to a problem that you made, will all be infused with that anxious energy, which is not the best energy, right? That's not the best foundation to build those things with. You took the disciplined approach of sitting down, laying down, taking a nap, and sat in your home, watched the tornado, did the breathing until the tornado cleared. And then you said, now I'm going to go outside. I'm 100%. And then what's the choice from here? And what I loved about that is you said, I might have been, if I had just gotten on that anxious wagon and ridden those wild horses, right? If they would have just like taken me, it could have been weeks before I came off of that ride. So a half an hour of really, really intentional breathing and focus and surrender is really what you did. Saved you maybe weeks of energy or catastrophe that you would have had to clean up later.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really, really having that difference between being in it and, being able to witness it, and that's where the work comes into play, because that mind is telling a story. For how many years of my life did I think that whatever story my mind was telling me was a fact?
Yeah.
It's a fact. Like, I didn't question it. I am my mind is what I thought, but then to really be able to, I've been down the road. I know why I'm conditioned this way. I know like how my father raised me, the environment I was raised in, that failure is not an option. You must achieve. Like I know the programming and the conditioning that's in there. When the trigger comes up and the thoughts arise and the feelings follow, at first I had to go, hey, why are those thoughts happening? What's the actual thought? What is it? And now it comes up. I'm like, I've looked through every little nook and cranny of that thought. I know there's no fact in there. There's nothing for me to learn. It's just, so I don't even need to spend a minute on it. I just need to go lay down. Now, other times when it's a new emotion and I don't know the source of it, you can sit and try to understand that thought. Where's that coming from? What belief do I have in me that's triggering that, and really get to understand the self more and how I work. Oh, wow. When that trigger pops up, I feel this way. Okay. Do I want to feel that way? Do I want to choose? Is this what I choose? That's the self-learning, the self-understanding, this inner work that we talk about so much.
Love that. Thanks for sharing that, Keith. I mentioned a few minutes ago that these last 15 months of my life have been probably the most challenging that I've ever experienced emotionally, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Ever since I started listening to the Michael Singer work, I started listening 18 months ago. And like, this is not an exaggeration. I've probably listened to 200-300 hours of Michael Singer at this point. Like, I just put all of his audio lectures on repeat. I've listened to Living from a Place of Surrender. And over the last 15 months, I've had a lot of things not go the way I've wanted them to, whether it's with like romance or finances, or the biggest one has been the way I feel physically. Over the last 15 months, I've been increasingly more tired. I've been increasingly weaker. Like my strength is gone. When I work out, it takes me days to recover. And, we just did this 100 Great Push-Up Challenge that I was responsible for co-running and leading, but I was like the face of that challenge for 900 men around the world. And I had to step down from doing the physical push-up challenge because my body couldn't take it anymore. I always used to feel invincible, almost to a like an ignorant degree, like nothing could hurt me, jumping off cliffs and like doing stupid stuff that I could have gotten myself hurt. But then I found myself in this place where my mind was like, I'd be walking down the street in New York City and I'd be walking by like an energy transformer. And I'm like, is that thing going to blow up? And am I going to die? I'd walk underneath one of those emergency ladders and I'm like, is that thing going to fall on my head and crush my skull? I got in this place of there's something going on, and I could witness those thoughts and I could feel the cascade of emotions come through me and, dropping out of the challenge, like you're a failure, like those thoughts came up and I knew not to engage in those because they were just story, like you said. But the computer, the mind is a computer. It just spits out the program, kind of like going to the doctor's office when they bang your knee. The reflex is just, you have no choice. It comes out, right? But I do have the choice of, do I want to absorb myself in that thought or not? I've gone to doctors. I've gone to nutritionists trying to figure this thing out, right? And it's really interesting. When you go to a Western medicine doctor, they think it's something with like that drugs need to heal. You go to a woo-woo, Eastern medicine nutritionist and they need to put you on supplements. You go to someone who's spiritual and there's something karmic that I'm dealing with. Like everyone, to a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? Everyone's got their responses. And I started telling myself a story that I ended up believing in, which was, I'm dealing with something deeply spiritual. I'm letting go of all of these like emotions that I've held for many years. I'm about to level up in this area of my life, so that I can be free from these thoughts. And that placated my mind for a while, but it was my mind manipulating itself. And I felt okay for a while because that would be worth it, right? A year and a half long situation like that, my mind said it would be worth it. I could write books about that. I could teach on the podcast about that. The pain I've gone through would be worth it. I go see my nutritionist and she's like, I think what you're experiencing is a backlash from the vaccines and the booster that you got. My mind went ballistic, right? And I could feel just the dread, the anger, the ferocious resistance to that. And I was pissed and I'm walking around steaming, stewing for 30 minutes until I sit down in meditation. And I look at myself and I go, holy shit, how fickle is my mind? It was okay for a moment when I told it a story that it wanted to believe. And as long as nothing came in and disturbed that, as long as no one threw a rock in my pond and didn't create any ripples, I was all right. As soon as the nutritionist came in and said what she said, bang, I was off to the races again in anger. And what that did was it was actually this beautiful new awareness to laugh because I'd actually relinquished my seat of self. I jumped into a story that I'd made up to placate my shit for a moment. And I recognized the folly in that. And it was a beautiful lesson to say, okay, I have an opportunity to maintain a better level of vigilance and staying in my seat, even when the tornado's coming around, right? To resist the urge to create a story that will calm me down, to just let it do its thing and pass. And here's what happened, Keith. 2 days later, I got a blood test back. And it turns out I'm anemic, which means I have a shortage of iron and all the symptoms around anemia, which are like weakness, fatigue, cold hands, cold feet, chest pains, headaches, are all the things I'm experiencing. And I have a very simple path to get back, which is, supplements, iron, those kinds of things, eating more food, iron-rich foods. And my mind wants it to be more complicated than that. My mind wants it to be some spiritual story that I can write a book about. I'm fucking anemic. And I get to laugh at that. And it's like, okay, you know what? This year and a half journey that was so wrought with emotional roller coaster actually gave me this beautiful opportunity to slow down, to dismantle parts of my ego, to witness my mind and how to actually to release its power over me, to sit further back in my seat of self. And it was a beautiful, although brutal training ground for that period of time. And maybe that is the book I write. You know what I mean? Like maybe there's that story. But my God, like if I didn't have these tools, that thing could have swept me away into some really dark places because I'd never gone so dark thinking that, do I have cancer? Do I have, something terminally ill with me? I went to those places, never had before, but I was able to eject versus getting absorbed in them for too long.
Awesome. I mean, wouldn't it be great if you could just like, I always think about this, if you just could go back to a year and a half, Dom, and whisper in his ear, it'll be fine, you know?
Right.
And you just wouldn't have like, and that's how everything in life, like you go on this roller coaster of, I think, you know, it's not going to work and this, and oh my God. And then at the end, everything ends up working out or you die. And then it's done there, you know, like, and everything before you just keep living and you wake up and you, whatever's before you, you handle, you know. I want to get closer and closer to just being okay with this human experience, man. Being human, shit happens all the time. And there's challenges and this and that. And, you know, the example I love to give is like, if you play basketball and every shot goes in, how fun would it be to play basketball? It would suck. You would never play the game again if it went in every single time. It's a good game because it's really hard to get that ball in there.
Yeah. But you get pissed when it doesn't go in. Like you get angry and, you know, like indignant when it doesn't go in, right?
It's a necessary part of the game.
It's necessary. Exactly.
So when you want something to show up a certain way and it shows up another way, it doesn't mean you didn't still want that to show up that way, but it doesn't have to throw you off in such a catastrophic way. You can just go, okay, now we have this. That's all. And I'll be okay with this.
That's right.
Because you will be, whether you tell a story where you're not going to be okay with it or not, you're going to be okay with it.
Look at some of the greatest spiritual teachers of our lives. You know, Nelson Mandela gets imprisoned for however many years, 30 years, 40 years, found a way to accept that, found a way to find the deepest part of his being, came back and revolutionized his home country, right? He's like a legend forever. Ram Dass, one of the greatest spiritual teachers that Michael Singer even, you know, learned under. Ram Dass teaches all of this stuff, and he ended up suffering a stroke near the end of his life that debilitated him, put him in a wheelchair. And I don't know if it was paralysis, but he couldn't take care of himself anymore. Couldn't wipe his own ass, like couldn't get, you know, up and down, couldn't feed himself, had to be taken care of. And he ended up finding a way to describe, he went to some really dark places after that happened, but was able to come back and be like, look at these beautiful pains that my body's experiencing. Look at these beautiful people who are here to take care of me, to wash me, to put me in my wheelchair, who are tending to me, who are learning from this experience. He found a way to love and actually did his deepest teaching, some of his deepest teachings from that place. Many of us and many of our listeners, I imagine, have been listening to this episode kind of going like, well, I could be okay as long as that thing doesn't happen, right? You know, as long as I don't end up in a stroke in a wheelchair. And listen, I'm not saying that in the state of my evolution, I'm not saying that I could be okay with that just yet. But I am working towards a place where if that were to happen, I would want to be okay. I would want to have a life that has meaning, that I could find beauty in, even if that were to happen. And that is something that requires work, which requires what you did yesterday.
Yeah, Michael Singer's got a great line. He says, enjoy all the notes that the heart plays, you know? And like we sign up to go on roller coasters because we want this rush and we want to be scared. We watch scary movies. Like emotions are all great and fun, you know? But when it's about us, you know, specifically, and it's not something we want, or at that moment we resist it and there's the suffering. But if we can just enjoy all these different experiences of loss and gain and like connection and disconnection and love and anger, and these are all like, it's the beauty of being human, you know, and we just enjoy that ride no matter where it takes us. That's where I'm like pointing my car. I'm trying to drive down that road, you know, and there's more work to go on the way.
Here's your call to action. If you've been inspired by this conversation between Keith and I on how to cultivate control and calm in the eye of the storm, you now have 3 opportunities to refine your practice, to develop that, to cultivate that calm and control. Option number 1, at the bottom of the show notes, go download the book, Living from a Place of Surrender by Michael Singer. It's an audiobook. It's 8 hours. It's changed my life. It's the most important book I've read over the last 4 or 5 years now. I'd put it right up there with Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill, which has been the number 1 most important book of my life. I've listened to this audiobook now probably 8-9 times now over the last year and a half. Can't recommend it enough. That's at the bottom of the show notes. Option number 2, starting a breathwork practice. I've included at the bottom of the show notes a very simple 3-minute breathwork practice that will help to get you out of your head and into your body and calm tension and anxiety so that you can start to bring a deeper level of awareness to when your thoughts and your emotions are going crazy and to not be affected by them. Option number 3, as always, at the top of the show notes, is an invitation to join the Facebook group for men. This is the community where men are already working on cultivating calm in the eye of the storm. Come in, introduce yourself. The group is very welcoming. Guys come in all the time. They introduce themselves right away. There's a whole group of guys who come in and comment and say, welcome. Come in the group, say, here's what I'm working on. Does anyone have any book recommendations or app recommendations? Or what are your meditation practices? I promise you that there will be men who come in and respond and tell you what's worked for them. And this is your way to stop lone wolfing the mindfulness part and to bypass all of the learning on your own and to accelerate your development by asking guys what's already worked for them. And that link to the Facebook group is at the top of the show notes.